You've probably heard it, chronotypes. Yes, that some people are awake during the day and some people are awake during night, and it was evolutionarily important. Is there actual science behind it, or is it just entirely nonsense? I say, as I'm recording at 3 a.m., because I do not sleep. I cannot sleep. I can maybe fall asleep somewhere between the hours of 5 a.m. and noon, and this is the problem that I've had since childhood. Now, you do have to understand that this is one of those areas that sits between real science and popular science and social media and straight up nonsense. That is a difficult place to be, and a lot of it is associated with psychology. And I am not the biggest fan of most psychology. I do admit it has a lot of uses, but there's also the replication problem. Most psychological studies cannot be replicated, and there has been widespread fraud. I'm sorry, I mostly respect psychologists, but they have a lot of problems in their field. Now, there are lots of different explanations for why we might see people that are awake in the day versus night. I mean, one of the theories is that it was helpful to our ancestors. Someone would be able to watch the tribe at night, and some people would be functional during the day, and that is, a nice sounding explanation. The thing is, we do not have evidence for it. And yes, we can even find metabolic differences in people who are night owls versus early birds. We can find genetic differences, and that would make sense. If you look at a group of people that has a certain characteristics, yeah, you are likely to find similar genetics. But we do not have the correlation and causation issue locked down. Look, I do not sleep. I prefer to walk at night, usually after midnight to 1 a.m. when I'm unlikely to see another human being. I attribute this to the fact that I just don't want to be bothered, and nighttime is the only time when people leave me alone. Often if I'm out walking at night and I see another person, it kind of ticks me off a little bit because this is my time to be by myself and they're in my space. But that is more along the lines of anxiety than something that would help a community. So how do we parse out genetics from something that is actually helpful, or malady from something that is in us because it was advantageous? And this leads to a lot of really bad statements on things that are really not science. Now, there is some research that throws a wrench in the entire idea that there are early birds and night owls, and that is that we've looked at isolation studies, people in caves that have not had sunlight or other human interaction, and their sleep cycles do not regulate the way that you might expect. People will sometimes go to a 48-hour sleep cycle, in which they will be awake for 36 hours and then sleep for the next 12 to 14. Some people will sleep for a 25-hour day, and this suggests that our sleep schedules are actually adapted to based on our environment and not intrinsic, and that does make some intuitive sense, which I know. I hate. Our brains are highly adaptable. That is what they do. It's what keeps us alive and allows us to operate cell phones and computers when we could otherwise be building fires or hunting with our bare hands. Actually, we're frugivores, so we should be eating fruit if we're going to go by ancient rules. NASA has found the exact same thing in their prolonged isolation studies. Yes, without the sun and without social pressure to tell you to go to sleep, people take on some pretty wacky sleep-wake behaviors. Are we just going to call it a chronotype, groups of people that take on a 48-hour sleep-wake cycle where you're up for roughly a day or asleep for another, or the people who decide to sleep for 30 hours straight? That would probably be me. I'm convinced that would be me. Will we assign that as a chronotype? Probably not. There might be some brain structural reasons why someone might more readily adapt to one versus the other, but I think what all of this is really saying is that we have a cycle that we sometimes ignore for other reasons, like myself, and it can be adjusted with some concerted effort, maybe, probably, possibly. I personally do not want to change, and therefore I probably won't be. I will close this out by saying that some researchers do believe that chronotypes are real. Others, like myself, think that it's kind of misinterpretations, but more research is needed, as always, because science is a developing field. I am perfectly ready to be wrong. I hope you've enjoyed this. Follow for more.